Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world today. I am super excited for today's presentation. I don't know about you. Jose said to go ahead and get your pencils and your notepads ready. I have a full mug of coffee here, for the better or for worse. And I'll let Jose go ahead and introduce Sean, but I think that it's awesome to talk a little bit deeper about electrification today. Probably some of you know, along with me, that people are talking all over the US about getting a cleaner grid, electrifying everything and whatnot. And that's not quite as easy as it sounds to just do. So I'm excited to hear a little bit more from Sean. But Jose, please take it away.
Hey, thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Zach, for the introduction, and thank you everyone for being here with us. Yeah, we're all excited to hear Sean do his presentation. Last time he was in, he did a great history of electrification, which I found extremely interesting. So yeah, definitely get your pads out and your pencils because I'm sure it's going to be a wealth of information raining down from him. So just a quick intro for Sean. So Sean Armstrong is the managing principal of Redwood Energy, the nation's oldest and all-electric residential design consultancy. Between 2007 and 2020, Sean led the design of half the zero net energy residences built in California and one-fourth of the zero net energy residences in North America. Following his mother-in-law's death in the 2017 Tubbs fire in Santa Rosa, California, Sean hired leading environmental lawyers in 2018 to devise legal strategies to ban gas in buildings that were adopted in Berkeley and 80 other governments nationwide. He has co-authored 6 guides to building electrification and has received the grand prize in the United Nations World Habitat Award and introduction into California's Clean Energy Hall of Fame. Well, that's a good bio for Sean, and I will let him now go ahead and do the electrification 201. Go ahead, Sean.
Well, that was very flattering. Thank you very much. So I'm calling in from my little demonstration tiny home office. It's very modest. It's 100 square feet. It's all recycled materials. There's wool from a bedding company that's in the walls, and done a bunch of cool stuff with the sourcing of everything. So here I am, and I would like to teach you about Electrification 201. Here is a demonstration of how safe electricity is. High voltage, but low amperage. I want to give you a little reminder if you didn't come to my last presentation, or if you just want to get a quick, like, what happened again? Briefly, the history of electrification. We might call it starting about 1935 with the Rural Electrification Administration, which was a government organization that got rural America, 90% of which did not have electricity at all. Unless they had a microgrid. There were 1 million microgrids around the country at that point, about 1935, in the countryside, people making their own electricity. But having dependable power through wires is superior. So about 60% of America's landmass was electrified by that agency. By the 1950s and 60s, you see electrification playing a huge role in just sort of the gentrification of America, the making of money happening around. So people getting great appliances. There was even, Ronald Reagan had a demonstration mansion that he showed off in various infomercials in the 1950s because he was the director of the General Electric Theater, which was designed to promote successfully all electric housing. So we got, in 1962, we got a code in the United States, 100 amps for every house, that allows you to have an all-electric home according to 1962 technology. It's certainly easier today. But it paused for about 20 years because of 2 energy crises, 1973-4, and then also 1979. So, and in California, we had another energy crisis in 2000 that caused our code to be anti-electrification until 2019. It's definitely swimming upstream for a long time. But, interestingly, in 2006, Schwarzenegger and the democratically controlled Congress, bipartisanship there, they passed the Global Warming Solutions Act. It called for all electric housing by 2020. Did not accomplish that, except Berkeley did. And it was really fueled by the decline in the cost of solar that started in 2010. I started being involved in installing solar in 1995, and then started actually doing it as a job in 1999 and 2000 and teaching it and such. And at that time, the cost per watt was about $5 a watt. And it is now 15 cents a watt, 30 cents a watt. Exponential decline in cost of solar, which has made everyone's electricity much cleaner, as I'll show you in a moment. As mentioned, when my mother-in-law Nan died in the Tubbs fire in 2017, that's the one that burnt down large parts of Santa Rosa. It was one of the first obviously climate change induced fires after we'd had a mega drought and exceptionally high temperature summers that had never been seen before, year after year after year after year after year. Everyone's like, oh, this is the new normal. We're going to be burning down our cities for a while. So Berkeley, they took the legal advice from the lawyers I'd hired to try to address this issue, and they banned gas, in total contradiction to what the state government at that time was trying to do. They were still pushing gas into the code, and they're still against electrification in the code. So there was a real philosophical paradigm shifting conversation happening among all the environmentalists around then about, should we be using quote unquote clean gas, or should we be using electricity with cheap solar? Then on the right hand side, this is a nice new graph just came out. You can see in orange the sales of gas furnaces each year. You can see in blue the sales of heat pumps. And starting in 2019, they got neck and neck. And ever since, we've had them either neck and neck or heat pumps above. And we're seeing again now in 2024 that the lead is widening. While gas furnaces had a small recovery, heat pumps are accelerating in adoption. And I think that's because our whole community of reporters, designers, all of us out there are trying to go for clean energy. And it's working, as we were talking about it and rebating it and setting up programs, etc. Now, as a 201, I'm going to start leading you into some advanced electrification. I just gave you a quick little history. Now we're going to get into the fun stuff. And so one of the best examples of advanced electrification, pardon me, my cat. It's raining out, so my cat wants in. Come on, man. Oh, you lost your chance, son. Okay, sorry about that. So the Silent 60 was the first one, then the Silent 80. They did a Silent 100, and the Silent 120 is, he's back. Okay. Come on, bud. There we go. Sorry. Okay. You can see it in the upper right-hand corner. It's a $12 million, so it's about $1 million for every 10 linear feet of boat. It's 3 stories tall. It's got 6 staterooms in it. There's a helicopter pad on the top. It's got a hot tub. It's, as I'll show you in just a moment, jet skis and a small electric submarine that go off of either side of it. And this thing goes 100 miles a day on just the solar panel array on the roof. And the batteries. This is not a diesel powered boat. It is the 3rd generation super yacht gorgeousness, and it really provides self-sufficiency in a way that other yachts do not. So these pop off on the side. Aren't they fun? The Silent jet skis you can get a whole bunch of different brands: Tega, Electrojet, eDolphin, Narky. But Tega is what I have here. They were the first ones coming out. They also make amazing, that was the first thing they did, is they made snowmobiles, because it's a Canadian organization. And so like 0 to 60 on a snowmobile in 3 seconds, just as fast as a Tesla that you floor. It's so wild. Super quiet. So yeah, on the left-hand side, you get your jet skis out when you come to shore in Monaco or wherever. And then if you want to go see the sunken cities, you can go down and this is a U-boat by Works, W-O-R-X, and this pops out the other side. It's a nice little electric submarine. So these kinds of technologies are what you can get out of the deal of electrifying. You can't do that with gas. You can't have a jet ski fully fueled up, so to speak, after you've been crossing the Pacific Ocean, which is a trans-Pacific boat. You can go to Hawaii in that thing, and it's just running on the solar panels, 100 miles a day. Off you go. So what does that mean if you are crossing the Atlantic from New York and going to London, as many people would in a boat? That means that instead of it taking 1 week, it takes 3 weeks. And if you were sailing in an old-fashioned, like with sails boat, it would have taken you about 9 weeks. So it's 1/3 as fast as sailing, like Greta did, when she came over. And it is not as fast as going with gas. Fair. But what a nice ride. So now I'm going to tell you a quick story about this off-grid development that we've been working on for a couple of years. It starts construction. So this is my old boss when I worked at a general contractor / developer company. Dan Johnson, super intense dude. He always looks like this. Like he never smiles. He's just like kind of in a semi-state of panic and wild guy. So he I came to him and I said, we just lost our site with this huge research grant. I'm coming to you with my hands open. Can you please help me? I need a site. I have this big grant to design a passive house, all electric, self-sufficient. It has to be off-grid, like from 4 o'clock to 12 o'clock. He's like, can you just make it off-grid? PG&E is the #1 problem for all of our developments. And this is someone who has to go through entitlements in really difficult cities. And he was emphatic. He's like, this is the problem. We can't get them to respond within even 1 calendar year of submitting to them with the design. And then when we're complete, they won't show up for months, up to 9 months. You'll just have an empty building there, complete. I was like, I can do that. Yeah, we can go off grid. I was like, geez, Louise, what am I saying here? But what I learned already is that starting with, because PG&E starting in 2020 essentially is undergrounding lines up in the mountains to stop fires from coming down and burning everybody. They had made choices with some of the communities. Now there's dozens of them that are so small, just a few houses here and there up in the mountains, because California is massive and our forest lands are huge. And even though it might look like it's all national forest, there's tons of little dots of historic homesteads that people have kept in the family that have electrical services out to them. And PG&E started making these off-grid in 2020. 95% of it was solar and batteries, and then 5% propane generators. So I'd already known that when he was asking me a couple of years, like, this is what you should do. So we sort of dragged along this whole big research team, EPRI and the rest of it, to accomplish that. And so I'm just going to speak to a couple of things. The heart of it, how we get it off grid, is that we import energy through the batteries of cars, like Utrecht, Netherlands is doing, and we store it as an expandable battery. In order to go off grid, we need the equivalent of about 12 Tesla Powerwalls per apartment. In order to be 95% off grid, we need the equivalent of about 3.5 to 4 Tesla Powerwalls per apartment for 95%. So what do we do with this last 5%, which is exponentially larger? You go from 4 to 12 Tesla Powerwalls to take up that last 5%. And it turns out, well, you know how many Tesla Powerwalls are on wheels here? I mean, these are like 70 to 80 kilowatt hour batteries. So you're looking at 6 Tesla Powerwalls. Sometimes the bigger cars that are like Teslas that are going 100, 130 kilowatt hours, that's 10 Tesla Powerwalls on one set of wheels. Huge expandable battery. And Utrecht has been pioneering it now for years. They've got 1,000 chargers installed so far. They've got 500 they're installing this year. They're essentially working with various car vendors who will pair up with the right inverters they have. So you've seen Hyundai Ioniq 5s all the way through 9s. You've seen e-Renaults, electric Renault cars. Tesla has it built into all their cars now, but they haven't released the software. So you have, and also a law here in California, by 2028, cars, electric vehicles are supposed to be bi-directional, all of them. And since this is the #1 market for selling them in the United States, it means all the car manufacturers are like, all right, we'll give you access to the inverters. Now, second part of this is, how do we buy the batteries? I was mentioning before how there's so much battery in the car. Well, let's talk about the cost of this battery. So I've got these Tesla Powerwalls all lined up. What I got here, 6, 7.5, something like that. So this is for 100 kilowatt hours of battery installed, is what you're seeing here. $130,000 is what it would cost. If I go out and buy that truck, the Ford the F-150 Lightning, get one that's just even slightly used, like so many people would. I have a used EV, sure. $67,000, the same 100 kilowatt hours. And I have to install like a $10,000 fancy charger if I'm using the F-150 Lightning, and that's going to change in 2028 because soon all of this fancy stuff you have on the wall just gets built into the car, like Tesla has it now. But anyway, it's $67,000. It's half as expensive to buy these batteries in vehicles as it is to buy them in little pieces and stick them in together. And this is fundamentally because the #1 market for batteries in the world are cars. It's at least 3 times the volume of batteries going into cars than anything else. And that includes all the utility batteries that you might be thinking are being installed. Cars are the battery market. There isn't another market by comparison when everything else rattles around in like 25% and 75% is cars. That is where you get cheap batteries, mass produced, and you just drive them up to your house or up to your building. So that's why we're using the parking lot approach. We got a DOE grant. Looks like we'll hopefully get to keep it. We'll see. We have a DOE grant to take Tesla batteries out of cars that have been totaled. And then just, for whatever reason, the car is being recycled. Take the batteries out, test them, get them all balanced together, link them together with the right cells, have a fancy new inverter, and ta-da! We have a 2 megawatt hour rejoule battery. And we got grants to stick them into the first zero energy project that was in New Mexico, we got to support, and into the Red Lake Nation in Minnesota, tribal nation there. And I think we're going to be doing another tribal nation locally, Hoopa, Native Sovereign Nation up here, for their clinic. And then at our site, the Affordable Housing Apartment Complex. Now, as I'm saying, this is advanced. So I'm going to just pause for a second and look in the chat to see, like, was anyone going, what are you talking about? Ori Potts, you're asking, does it have a diesel generator? You're looking at the Silent 120, I assume. Does it have a diesel generator? It does have an onboard diesel generator that you have as an option. You don't have to have it. But yeah, people do, but it's still. And oh, you're looking for check for the e-foils? Is that for the transoceanic big metal veins that they put up, like modern day sails that you're talking about? Yeah, I have that as a slide, but not in this presentation. I mean, in order to make this presentation, keep in mind, I brought together some advanced residential materials, and I'm also going to show you some advanced industrial electrification, breweries, like making beer, right? And some ice cream and some fun stuff for you, basically, is what 201 is looking like. So here, right. M. Reynolds says, land helicopters on the roof, where are the solar panels? The solar panels, they have an awning that separates. So like basically they uncover the helicopter pad. And then it's like sort of gull wings. And then when the helicopter is gone, then they go back again and they cover the roof. Sorry, my best friend. I'll call you back. Who here has a best friend from, middle school and high school? Isn't that nice? Yes, keep those people. Okay, so Kim says, to those that's just joining, as questions occur, please post them in chat. Yeah, Dan's like, I ride on Solaris at the Hudson River Maritime Museum. All electric, no battery backup, not a 12 boat, but nice. Okay. Chris, you say, does net metering limit of 10 kW in Massachusetts a bottleneck for this? Does the limit need to be 25 kW? All houses, right? They could get by with 4 to 6 kilowatts, unless they're like super mansions, but everything else, 6 kilowatts, and then you have 2 kilowatts per car. So 10 kilowatts for most people's homes, 95% of people's homes, 10 kilowatts is enough for an all-electric, efficient home with 2 cars. It could be more. And you can also put inverters that curtail anything more than 10 kW going out of the grid, which would expand the hours of the day that you put 10 kW into the grid with never exceeding it. So you put up a 14 kW solar array, and most of the year it's producing at 10 kW, but in the summer at the peak, it'd be producing the full 14 kW, and you can just clip it at 10. It's called a clipping inverter. Solar Edge makes them. and F-150 future fancy stuff gets built into a car, do you mean that I only need to place a 230-volt plug in the garage wall? Let's go back to the bidirectional car thing for a second. Okay, and you're saying here's the F-150. And the question is, do you mean that now? No, not now. Now you have to put up about $10,000 worth of stuff of inverters and a small battery and things that go up on the wall. And it's like, yeah, $10,000+. But by 2028, there will still be a charger. This charger on the wall is going to accept AC electricity from your car's battery because you'll have an inverter in your car. And you have inverters in your car now, but they're rewiring them to make them work just right. So, but the point is that you make this AC electricity in your car, and it flows through a wire to a box on the wall. And this new small box, like, you bought it for $1,000 kind of box, that box is making a relationship with the utility, like their grid. But you are making essentially grid quality electricity from your car. And it's still being mediated by the box on the wall, but it's not like $10,000 with a box with a battery and a blah, blah, blah. It's just like an EV charger box. Okay, it's just another lovely example of advanced all-electric homes. And this is not the only one. There's a whole bunch of people who've been making these floating mansions that go up and down various rivers in Europe. It is nice, Now, but let's get back to something practical. Did you know that last year in the real world, at the end of the year, 96% of all of the grid energy built in the United States was clean? If you look at the numbers, 58% of it is that cheap solar I was mentioning. Next in line, surprise, is battery storage, because batteries have become cheap also. I mean, they've dropped now to the range of $125 per kilowatt hour stored, and they were not long ago $1,000. So once again, you're seeing an exponential drop like we saw in between like 2009 and 2014 or 15 or so in the production cost of just a radical 90% plus drop in cost. That just happened to batteries. And it's a past tense thing. It's been happening rapidly for the last 5-6 years, where all of a sudden batteries are coming to the rescue to keep on California's grid, like last summer when we had heat waves, the worst ever. Our grid is not stressed anymore because we have batteries now, not new gas plants that are peaker plants. We're shutting those down. Next in line is 13% wind. That's mostly onshore, and that's controlled by individual states, not by the federal government, which controls offshore. So yeah, offshore is definitely affected by what's happening. Onshore, like I think it was yesterday, Montana just voted to keep on putting up wind turbines. I mean, they're getting rich off of wind turbines, and they're not saying no. They're just a fuel state. They don't care about what Trump thinks about them. Pardon me. It's funny to see inter-Republican Party conflicts over wind turbines. No political commentary beyond that. So, and then nuclear power. So we had only 4% was fossil fuels from natural gas plants that were turned on. And it's unlikely that we'll see it anything less than this next year because solar is so cheap. This is not really a political conversation, and batteries are so cheap. Yes, you see grants, you see tax credits, all that stuff is there. The tax credits also can't disappear. They're not an executive orderable thing. So this is our new grid that we're building as of 2024. Just the previous year, the new energy that we'd built had been about 39% fossil fuels. So going from 39% down to 4% in 1 year. Now, on electrification, and I want you to understand, like you are all now dealing with a forevermore being built clean grid because of cost effectiveness, and it is safe and appropriate to electrify everywhere. Soon you can do it with electric resistance like they can in Washington state, and that's still decarbonization because their grid is 96% or more hydropower. Whatever energy you're using at whatever efficiency, make it electricity. It's better than the gas. But this is a map that was made in 2016, tracking data between 2010 and 2014, and it's the Propane Education Research Council freaking out because what they're seeing is market share shift everywhere in the nation. regardless of politics, moving in favor of electrification when people are choosing their water heaters and their furnaces, and the new construction of all electric homes, which they were tracking at the county level. The reason why, look over the lower right-hand corner, this is the brother of a pretty famous architect in California. Scott Schell's brother, David Schell, works for a utility. So he's the energy sales supervisor at Gulf Power Company down in Pensacola, Florida, where their family's from. So he says, in our territory, 100% of multifamily buildings are built all electric. He's up in the panhandle of Florida, as are 60% of full-service restaurants. We've had success selling Wendy's and McDonald's on electric cooking. Also, that's not necessarily full service. That's fast food. So it's just because it's cheaper. It's cheaper to build that way. And so market share is driven by what choices people are making, because 95% of homes are built by developers. Many of you might be helping developers design it, but it's not that many people who are single-family homes being built with an architect. And so this is pretty savvy developers tracking what is the least expensive way for them to build, regardless of politics. Now, look here. This is the efficiency gains. Oh, Jay-Z, you want to know what brand is that houseboat? I couldn't find it. I was just grabbing it quick last night. It's going up and down a river in Berlin if you want to hunt it down. Okay, so looking at this image for a sec. Gas furnaces on the left, heat pumps on the right. You can see that the federal minimum efficiency of about 200% efficient. So 1 unit of electricity goes in and you get 1 more unit of electricity of energy collected from the environment. So that's, you deliver 2 units of energy for 1 that you consumed. That's 200%. Gas furnaces, you have 1 unit of energy. You can never get better than 97% of it. So you're always losing. And now heat pumps in the United States, 380% efficient, 440% efficient. The best ones we're seeing in Japan are about 760% efficient. Advanced refrigerant, bigger fan, only 1 fan coil inside, not 3 of them. So if you just optimize the heck out of it, that's how you get all the way to the tippy top. There are still room to go. Pool heat pumps, which only do like a 10 to 20 degree lift, they're at 1,300% efficiency in the summertime, collecting energy that's 70 degrees and turning it into like an 85-degree swimming pool. So heat pumps can go way up there. Now, I'm going to quickly look at the questions here. John Snell, you say, how are and how will tariffs affect the prices of solar PV panels and inverters now and over this year? Because of the Trump administration last time, there was a great diversification of where solar was installed in the world. So Thailand became a big builder, Philippines, there's factories. There's a lot of the nearby Asiatic countries that factories opened up in. So I'm expecting, as well as solar companies have opened in the United States because tax credits are stable. I think. So that's what everyone says. So oopsie, pardon me. So the tax credits we should have prices stay fairly stable. That's the answer. We don't necessarily see things going different. Yeah, and you're right, Annette, that the installation of solar in China is amazing. And they are doing huge amounts of work in decarbonizing their energy and cleaning up cities. And when you're in China, you look around and like all the vehicles are EVs. And there's whole cities that have been built up just around electrification. Okay. So trend lines. I'm just showing you trend lines. This is 201, right? You guys are at this point where like, why is this? What is this? I want a deeper understanding. So this is what has been happening in the United States around electrification just through market forces. 77% all electric in Florida, 72% all electric in Hawaii. These are places where it's warm, and old-fashioned single-speed heat pumps worked fine. A single speed heat pump is the same thing as a single speed bicycle when you're like looking at a hill. And a hill is a cold day in the wintertime or a very hot day in the summertime. And for a long time, people only built single speed heat pumps because they didn't have the controls down to do anything different. But they did eventually put in 2-speed heat pumps, which you can buy now, and you can find single speed heat pumps. That's probably 80% of the market is just federal minimum efficiency, single speed, one gear, so to speak. But starting in 2009, we saw heat pumps in the United States with computers in them. And that was really driven the shift that I showed you a moment ago with this map. That is the advent of computers, which began in 2009, and they immediately saw how all of a sudden in the northern states you're seeing electrification more and more. That's what the report identified as like heat pumps. Oh no, all of a sudden it's cheaper to install a heat pump than it is and operate for that matter, because propane is very expensive. So yeah, once we went from 200% efficient heat pumps in 2008 to 380% efficient heat pumps in 2009, that changed things. Those are the two heat pumps that I installed in my house. A 2008 one, and then next year in my mom's house next door, 2009, we got the next one, and it makes all the difference in the world of wintertime performance. And you can see here that the winter states, so to speak, they have avoided being all electric really just because the heat pumps were not there. So there's been slow change in all of these northern states, like I just showed you, but it's been incremental because most of the construction is in the southeast and the southwest. So Texas and Arizona, warm states, close to 40%. Oregon right above us, and Washington, where have inexpensive electricity because of hydro. California, our energy shock in 2000, the scam that was run by Enron and a few other utilities that drove up costs tenfold overnight and led to immediate blackouts across the state. They just essentially falsely constrained gas from being delivered to gas electricity power plants, gas fueled in California, which then made our electricity prices go through the roof, which led to a 20-year like, oh my God, electrification, don't do it, make the code, completely ban it in every way possible. And also, we've never heard of heat pumps. It's like literally the engineers, the Energy Commission never heard of heat pumps, air source heat pumps. So they just drove the code into the dirt. So that's why we have 8% all electric construction in California, even though we have a perfect climate for single speed heat pumps. So, and Paul Kershaw, I want to draw attention to my experience of V2G trials in the UK. This article about Blomberg. Cool. And I'm just looking over in the chat. PV become cheaper than roof tiles. Yeah. PV is cheaper than fencing in Germany. That's cute. Yeah. Here we go. This is another way of just looking at the data where what is the primary fuel use in 2017 to 2021? Snapshot now, about 10 years after some of the data I've just been showing you. This is primary fuel use. Look at the southeast, look at the northwest, northeast, southwest, and then you look at the center, where you have propane and fossil and natural gas predominant. I'm from Wisconsin, which is one of the worst states in the United States to try to get the economics of electrification of homes. The utilities there are a pretty strong army about setting their pricing so that it favors gas. And lots of fracking. A question is, how fire resistant are solar panels? They're really fire resistant. They're just glass and metal. They don't burn particularly. They can melt, break, turn into dust like everything else in a real wildfire, but they're not flammable. But then your question is, if they're installed as building integrated PV, where you don't have roofing material below, are you creating more of a fire risk from embers getting blown in and starting a fire? Embers get blown to the cracks of buildings, so you flash at the base. You flash anywhere where there's a sort of a ledge up against a wall, where you flash it with metal, and then you're you don't have vents into your attic. You use non-combustible roofing like roof tiles. California mission style, the reason why it's called that is because when the Indians were being enslaved and murdered en masse with just mass killings as a result of the missions, which always had a presidio next to them, they had a military component. It's like there's always a church and a military. The military goes out and enslaves the local population while killing all the adults, and then kidnaps people and brings them in. And then the people who are surviving on the outside, because there's, tens of thousands of people who live around where this is going down, they come and they do fire arrow attacks against the mission. And that happened 3 times. It burned down the Mission, as Elton John sings. And so Mission style is fire impenetrable stucco with fire impenetrable ceiling tile, like roof tiles. And that's why you have the Mission style. It is a counter-military building approach, specifically for fire coming from the sky. So it's still relevant as we fight against the fossil fuel induced climate change. Okay, another trend line for people to understand. I think this is 201 for me. Hopefully you find this a 201 for you as well. So across the country, we've seen electric and hybrid vehicles going through exponential growth in popularity starting in 2020. Yes, you've seen a bend to the curve in the last year. There's anti-electric vehicle propaganda that came out, but we're still pushing hard just as an industry. So that's on the left-hand side. That's just reality. You see the electric below, up we go. Then in California, if you're seeing electric vehicles like at 8%, 9% in 2023, this is in March of 2024 to the right. In the dark greens, that's where you're seeing above 50% of the new cars being purchased that are electric. Like see where Vallejo is, Look at some of the suburbs like Los Altos around San Jose, that's Silicon Valley. And the lightest colors, which is below 10%, like where 8% would be, yeah, that's some rural areas, but basically, wherever you find some population density, you start seeing 20, 30, 40, 50, 60%. And that's in 2023. Same year that this is done. So that was 2 years ago. And the trend has just continued to soar through California. Everywhere you look, you see electric vehicles. I live in a small rural town, 6 hours away from the Bay Area. EVs all over the place. The code in California has also changed. And this is, in 2016, they started requiring a place for you to have an EV charger on the wall and appropriate capacity in the code. Same with requiring 2016 solar on roofs of residences and a panel that's sized for it, 200 amps. Well, last year, I was part of an effort, a movement to make sure that apartment complex owners can jack the rates up on their chargers as high as they want. It's completely deregulated. And it disfavors getting electric vehicles into apartment complexes. So we got a code written, and we're now, if you're putting parking spaces out there, it's optional among 2 options to this year and becomes requirement. You're gonna have to directly wire from a parking space to someone's personal meter to get around this issue of the deregulated parking lot electricity. So we get into regulated low-cost EV electricity for tenants. So condos and apartment complexes, basically anything built out in the suburbs where there's a parking lot around it, but also the ones with there's subterranean parking below. Everyone gets it to their personal meter. No more of this jacked up rates nonsense for apartment complex dwellers specifically, or condos, Now, I'm going to do the questions real quick. And good job, Chris, getting rid of your gas. Nicely done. Hans, you were forced to keep a gas backup dual fuel. Boo. Yeah, you were quite upsetting as you wanted to get away from the gas, but the utility didn't allow it. Punks! Who do they work for? Also, heat pump is programmed to only work down to -10 centigrade, but it's rated to go lower, but the HVAC company discourages it. Oh, God. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. It sounds rough. Okay, so now I'm going to go into, how's my timing? 9:44. Ooh, okay.
Yeah, 15 minutes.
We're going to do this cute little, this is the first zero net energy single family development in the nation. We're 26 homes, all electric. Every single house was net positive every year. So people get billed back. We did it. How we did it, I want to give you the finances, bit of a deeper dive. Okay, in affordable housing, regulated affordable housing, you can't charge someone more than 30% of their income for rent and utilities. Who knows what the utilities are? Government organizations tell you what they are. They say, hey, you're going to utility allowance.
10 paper.
Oh, there you go. So it's 50 and 50 in this case. And then you can charge $650 in rent, and the non-housing expenses is $1,750. This is, by the way, a single person on minimum wage in California. This is what they make. Over on the right-hand side, the same housing expenses, $1,750 is preserved, but you have rent at $740 because you put in a zero net energy design. All electric, solar powered. You have bidirectional charging the solar back into the grid. That's the same value as what you're buying it for, $10. So this is how we've been working and still work in California on affordable housing. And to show you what that meant, this is the first housing that the state of California funded for any native sovereign nation. And I got to work on it up in Hoopa. It's the Trinity River Elder Village. You see them all opening up. And notice there's no landscaping, but every house has solar on it. This is the first time that the state had finally funded anyone living on a native sovereign nation to get affordable housing. This stuff is built at 200 apartment complexes a year, every year. It's a $2 billion industry, massive, and none of it was going to native sovereign nations at all until they finally put a policy in to force it. So this is the first one. Now, if you look at the table on the bottom, you can see if they had propane at the top there, their total bill would have been $79. If they put in a heat pump, because heat pumps are just lower cost compared to propane, would have had a $59 bill. This is why the Propane Education Research Council is freaking out. It's because they're like, oh my God, computer-driven heat pumps changes the game. When you put the solar array on, it's $5. So the tribe was funding this, and they didn't have the money at the end of the day to put in landscaping, but they had to put in the solar array basically because that was built into how the housing could even be afforded to be built and the loans could be paid back. That's the nature of it. It's like so much money saved this way. So just as a financial agreement, that's how zero net energy housing has grown in California. That's how I got this like 50% of the zero net energy housing built in California. And building hundreds of apartment complexes like this. This is one example. This is for low-income farm workers in the raisin capital of the United States, Selma in the Central Valley. So you're looking at this 2 and 3 bedrooms, the residence count on the bottom in purple. This is 48 of them. Now the monthly QAC, that's the California Utility Allowance Calculator that predicts the utility bills based upon the all-electric design and the solar array going in. So it's $10. So that's how they collect the rent based upon that $10. Utility allowance set aside, the $750 that you saw. Then the housing authority, this is real, they were going to say if you had an all-electric building without solar, it would be 117, 146, and 175. So they gained in rental revenue for putting in the zero net energy design $78,684 a year in over 15 years, which is their normal loan term. That's $1.2 million. And these solar arrays are pretty much free because of all the incentives and rebates. And all electric design is cheaper. So this is, let's call it no-brainer. So over my entire portfolio, well, over 47 apartment complexes, my portfolio, just a big old study of it, we found, so it's 3,000 residences, 65 per apartment complex, which is perfect. That's the average, essentially, for apartment complexes of that era in California. It's gone up. So we said, okay, we help these 47 projects. They made $65.8 million more in permanent loan revenue, which was $1.4 million per development on average of permanent loan revenue. That's the additional rental revenue over 15 years. And we're like, okay, but what was the cost of that? We're like, okay, after we did our little cost, we took out rebates, but we still put in the normal tax credits. It was $400,000 per apartment complex for the solar array, and the all-electric design was cheaper. So that net benefit of essentially $1 million, $995,000 per apartment complex, $1 million. Like, so what does that mean? That means with the average construction cost of these apartments was 300 grand per apartment, and we got them another $1 million. That means that we got them like 3.32 more apartments paid for with that solar array design. That's 5% more affordable housing that was built across our portfolio, just new apartments that existed because of the savings from the utility bills of an all-electric, zero-net energy, highly efficient design. And like, yeah, that is why we have more and more clients every year. It's like, this is because the competition is to build more with the same amount of money. That's how you win competitive funding. That's, 1 in 3 developments get funded. So this is the company that I helped found, as a project manager and the nerd that's like, let's do zero net energy. This is my old boss. It's like, all electric is a no-brainer. The cost of bringing gas to a building site is expensive. In our developments, all electric is less expensive to build, just as efficient or more efficient operations, and you can't generate gas on site, but you can generate electricity with solar electric panels to lower bills. This guy is a businessman, first, second, third, and fourth. He loves that. And he gets to be the president of Danco Communities now, because that company is the only part of the Danco group that survived the Great Recession. So he comes out of that with having lost all of the for-profit part of the company. All of it had to shut down, and only affordable housing continued to get built. Same thing during the COVID pandemic. Affordable housing got exemptions. They kept on building affordable housing through the pandemic, the first year. There was like essential workers status. So once again, kept the business going. How does maintenance compare on gas versus electric? Less maintenance on electric. So is this another developer? What's our time? Okay, I got 9 minutes left.
Yeah, you got
She
9
just says the same
minutes.
thing. That's Lori's awesome. One of the most professional people I've ever gotten to work with. Now I'm going to show you a couple of things that I learned. So this is one of the projects that won us a big award. This was like the Pacific Builders event. So it's like the whole Pacific Rim. It's not the United Nations one. That was a different one, but this is another yeah. And this is for low-income farm workers. These are people in Napa who grow your grapes, living in Calistoga specifically. So I wanted to show you some things we learned. We started doing second by second data monitoring on every single load starting in 2014 and have been running this now all the way through 2020, huge amounts of really rigorous data. So this mess is all the 2-bedroom apartments that were built to the same standard. They're in different climates, but they're essentially the same because we built them to such Energy Star for home super efficient standards that they all act pretty similarly. So this is the mess of everyone's consumption overlapping. And this is how just plug loads work. So King City and Oxnard, you can see all the different households over the course of one day. So each apartment got averaged for their average one day. How did they behave over 24 hours? Now look at the blue line, which is the Oxnard average, and the orange thick line in the middle, that's the King City average. Look how this spaghetti turns into thick lines of averages that match then the black line, which is the average between the two of them. Or actually the average of all the lines, pardon me. They behave almost identically, even though they look so different. And that is something that is like a deep insight that we got from the data. I want to go back to this one because one of the things you see here is that identical apartments next to each other in the hallway with the same size household and the same income, you'll have a different energy consumption of tenfold in any one day, from the lowest to the highest. Tenfold. And over the course of the year, the identical households and incomes and everything, it's a 3 to 4-fold difference between the lowest and the highest. Identical neighbors. People are really different in the way that they behave. And that is true, but they are also, they can behave in very predictable average ways, which is why your passive house software works for population scale. Now, this is one other one that's like, so what does this mean? How do you understand all this diversity? So in apartments, what we found is if there's one person, the average is 13 kilowatt hours. 2 people, it's 14 kilowatt hours. 3 people, it's 15. 16 people, like you go on, it's 1 kilowatt hour more per day for every person on average. And you can see how the yellow boxes, which contain 50% of the data, you can see how they're pretty similar to each other. And you can see how the upper and down ranges are also pretty similar to each other. There's a little tiny stair step up. But basically, this is like big studies do work. You can see our sample size, like 53 households, 44 households, 16 households. These are big samples that we got to say like this is how people in nearly identical apartments and identical incomes and all the rest of it, this is how they work. Oh, Bill, thank you very much. Now, I think, okay, with 5 minutes left, I could go into a whole nother topic, or I could pause here, because I didn't even get to industrial electrification. I just was starting to go into like how to avoid service upgrades and smart panels and cool tiny home stuff I have for you, because I've done a lot of tiny house developments. This is the one I'm in now. 30 amp households and how do you do like, low power cooking and 120-volt heat pump washer dryer machines. One box does everything. But I didn't even get into like the good stuff of beer and ice cream. So I hope you'll invite me back for 301, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll have time for a 301 because there's a good second side of this presentation as you have shown. But now I think we should go to our sponsors and then we can have some time for questions and a little bit more comments. We'll have probably 10 minutes more after the hour. I will have to jump off, but you'll stay with Sarah, Kim, and Zach.
That's right, Sean. This is amazing. And yes, absolutely. 301 for sure. So I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors that make our work here at House Accelerator possible. So a big thank you to our stakeholder partner, NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. Thank you to our founding sponsors, 475 High Performance Building Supply, Ingui Architecture, Partel, Rockwell North America, and Zola Windows. And thanks to our champion sponsors, Bewizo, Cascadia Windows and Doors, European Architectural Supply, Thacro, Icon Windows and Doors, Intelligent Membranes, and Source 2050. And thank you to our patron sponsors, Brennan, Polstrom System, Inotech Windows and Doors, Lamelux, RDH Building Science, and Sanderson Sustainable Design. Big thank you to our sponsors. Oh, actually, one more thing. I want to give a very special thank you to Sean. We had to do a last minute shuffle on today's programming, and literally Sean agreed to present today yesterday. So not only is this an amazing presentation and really, it's just so impressive to see your body of work, Sean, but I just want to say how grateful we are that you were game to come and do this. So thank you.
I enjoy this kind of thing, so it wasn't that hard. I would have been in it.
Yeah,
There's
clearly.
like 3 of my staff were trying to meet with me. Like I had work responsibilities, but this is way more fun.
Well, thank you for being game. This has been great. Really appreciate it.
Alrighty, we've kind of wrapped up some thoughts here, y'all, with the presentation, but we have a couple of questions that kind of snuck through here. So what I'm going to do is invite you all to unmute and ask your question if you have one, and Kim will throw up the queue of the questions. If you're maybe not on the call anymore, or if you're just feeling a little bit shy, I will read the question for you. And since this is a recording, you can totally come back and find the answer. So it looks like we have first Frank Crawford. Frank, are you still on the call? It looks like you had a question about R32.
Yep, I do.
Oh, awesome.
Just a question, have you, with the new, I guess, changes in regulation, have you actually seen any R32 refrigerant heat pumps actually available in the US? And since I'm from Canada, anything available in Canada?
Daikin has moved to R32. So that's Daikin has like our nation's largest factory. It's all electric, 100 acres underneath a roof. It's Daikin, and that's because they own R32. And other manufacturers of heat pumps are like, we don't want to use your proprietary R32 and be stuck with your stuff. So they've been coming out with other fluid, gassy stuff. Yep, Chris is saying Space Pack is R32. So I learned from the Canadians. You Canucks, you're such leaders. So Vancouver, BC, Micah Lang there, your sustainability director, he had told me about IFOCA. And IFOCA has those cool little package heat pumps, and they've moved to R32. They're now 40% owned by Panasonic. So they're kind of tied into that whole world. So I've seen some. And since IFOCA is, like I said, to me, it came from Canada. It's from Italy, but I think that'd be another brand. And I think you're going to find like a Carrier / Bryant in the United States. I think they're going a different direction, like a different refrigerant. That they always make these alphabet soups, like R1234XY. I was like, yeah, 454B. Mario, you're saying? I don't know. I don't know it off the top of my head. Definitely a Google search away, though.
All right, that's awesome. I'm excited for the time R32 is gonna really be the thing. Until then, Brian, do you want to ask your question? We got it, Brian Riley. Um, if you are still on the call, it looks like he was looking for a link or a reference to the apartment where the EVSE requirements are.
Oh, the Cal Green requirement. Let's see
Yes.
here. Let's see if I can find a 2024 interim Cal Green. Let's see. My Cal Green person, so to speak. Oh, there it is. I think this is it. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen real quick so you can see what I see. Cal Green interim code cycle updates went into effect on July 1st, and some of the neat things in it, understanding the 2023 embodied carbon amendments. So in California, they're starting to restrict embodied carbon, mostly from the concrete foundation. And, well, we'll put the link in because it is in here. Copy, chat, and to everyone, you can see how things are going. And also welcome, I'm gonna put my email address in the chat, Sean Armstrong, PM@gmail.com. If you reach out, I can try to help with other questions.
Sweet. You are so helpful, Sean. Thank you.
Happy to help.
It looks like we have another question, and the queue is pointing over to R. Annette. R. Annette, are you on the call? Would you like to ask your question?
Indeed. Sean, when you're developing a site now for all these different aspects of PV and batteries, are you finding the capital cost of the grid supply to the site and the transformers, are they roughly the same price as before, or are they going up?
Oh, the transformers, because there has been a transformer shortage. Like, Ukraine's transformers have been being blown up actively. And I'm not joking, like it has been a stress on the global market for transformers, the Ukraine war. So yeah, prices for transformers have gone up. We've gotten very strategic around not doing bespoke transformer sizing and instead using standardized sizes of transformers that are ubiquitous, but just doing like 3 of them in a row, as opposed to like, oh, we want a 1500 amp transformer. We're like, we'll take 3 500s, thank you, so that we can get the product here. So prices have gone up, and strategic thinking around using standardized sizes has also become a more standard feature of design, in my experience.
With the addition of PVs and batteries, are you finding that, and using them for heating and cooling, the buildings for heating and cooling, are you finding that your actual site supply requirements have gone up? As in, do the transformers for a site get increased?
Let me show you one of my slides that I didn't get to, because that'll address that question. Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, love it. Here and here. Okay, so this is SMUD, Sacramento Municipal Utility District, gas hybrid homes and all electric homes. This is their peak at a 15-minute increment, the most peaky 15-minute moment in the whole year. And from left to right, 4, 8, 12, 16, that's the amount of amps that's being consumed by these homes. And you can see that all electric homes do peak higher. This is like 22 amps and this is like 33 amps. But these are using electric resistance water heaters and single speed heat pumps. So it's a bit of a picture of the past, or it's the present tense. But then check this out. So this is using high performance modern heat pumps. And they went into 700 homes and they mapped out let's see, let's start here with orange. Orange is their electrical peak pre-retrofit. No heat pump was installed. And their peak was with a normal air conditioner, like a minimum efficiency. These 700 homes, no one had fancy air conditioners. And so the peak was at 3.9 kW. They put in heat pumps, which, since they are they are automatically going to come with a computer in them, which raises the efficiency of the air conditioning roughly 50% or more. What that meant is the peak dropped in the summertime to 3.4 kW among these 700 homes. Ah, and you say, well, yeah, but now they're heating in the wintertime. Isn't there going to be a big spike in the grid in the wintertime? That's the blue line. Yeah, now there is a spike in the wintertime of 3.3 kW. That's the big one in the morning time. People turn on their heat pumps to get warm, but that's less than the summer peak of 3.4 kW. So now you have a grid that's designed for summer and winter without there being any weird unbalancedness to it, as there is now to deal with summertime peaks. And both of these peaks are smaller than the previous peak. These are all electric homes. It's because air conditioning drives the peak. And it's a dramatic difference because air conditioning is a whole house. Other appliances, like, I'm just going to heat this water. I'm just going to heat this dish of food. I'm just going to heat this dryer. It's the whole house you're trying to chill down. So yeah, it's a big power draw to try to chill houses in the summertime. And the heat pump makes the difference. You still, yes, you do get a winter peak. You do get a smaller summer peak. Both those peaks are smaller than what our grid is designed for today. So post-electrification, you have a smaller grid impact than you had previously with existing homes. New construction, totally fair to say that a gas house versus an all-electric home, there's going to be some larger peak. And that's fair. It'll be a little bit bigger. However, we're dealing with the vast majority of the homes in the United States. They already exist. This is what it means to manage a grid, is with essentially all existing buildings, right? Because we add 1% a year maybe to the new construction, to the total housing market in our country. So that hopefully answers your question of, like, what does it mean to electrify?
Yeah. You're saying for new lot developments, though, that you might need a bigger supply to the site
Yes.
because of that peak.
It's
If
true.
it hasn't got battery storage built into the house design.
So, well, one of the things that I deal with, like, having to design in power constrained San Francisco. Essentially, it is so difficult. The city of San Francisco has its own utility. PG&E is the utility overlaying the city of San Francisco. The two of them have been at war for decades. And it means that if you try to put in a new service in any old lot in San Francisco, PG&E requires you to essentially triple it of what it would normally be. It's like this punitive thing. It makes it so hard to do service upgrades. So I've come up with a whole other thing that I would have spent some time teaching you on how to do power efficient design so you stay within the capacity that is already delivered to you. And what you see from left to right
The
is
retrofits, yeah.
these are cold climate heat pumps that don't need electric resistance. And this is like 120 volt kitchen appliances that use existing circuitry for the stoves. And these are 120 volt water heaters that use an existing circuit. This is all around the capacity that you require at the transformer. This is a 120 volt, 1400 watt washer dryer, the combo washer dryer. The Mr. Cool here, these do not have electric resistance in them. They just have better computers. They heat down to like negative 24 degrees Fahrenheit, just blasting. I don't know if there's a better cold climate heat pump, but they're awesome at that. We have here, this is a circuit splitter. So we plug the HVAC system and the stove, the induction stove, into one circuit. So once again, not having to increase the capacity on the house. That's code compliant. That's a standard product for $350 off of Amazon. Circuit splitters. Including we even have a PV array that's one of these rare plug into the circuit types. You don't have to get a permit from the PG&E. It's just for like 300 to 600 watts. But there are ways to design so that you use less power than the average gas electric hybrid home, but you have to use a specific suite of technologies, electric technologies that are available now. So these two homes, they had gas. We turned them into all electric homes, and they're two houses on a 100 amp service, but we used all power efficient devices. So it's like a yes and a no. Like, yes, if you were making an all electric home instead of a gas home, you probably, well, the thing is that the code since 1962 has required 100 amps. And so even if you only needed to put in 60 amps, the code was written essentially by electrification advocates the utilities at that history lesson at the very beginning. So you have to put 100 amps on a house to comply with the Canadian and American National Electrical Code. And that's always enough for an all-electric home. You don't have to increase the service capacity. You can do it on 100 amps. And that's, you still would want to think about efficient technologies, but even back in 1962, it was 100 amps was enough with electric resistance, primarily what they were working with, and single speed heat pumps.
Okay, thanks, Sean. Yeah, I'll let somebody else
Eric,
get a question in.
yeah, it's, you know, it can be 301 if you'd like, where we go through actual projects, like actual apartment complexes, and I show you how we've chosen, and maybe I'd show you like what it would have looked like with gas. If that's the direction you guys are interested in doing, we can do a pretty deep dive on how to manage the power demand of apartments. Oh, Angie, you like that? Okay.
That sounds awesome. It definitely sounds like some great 301 material for us to work on, especially kind of linking the bigger infrastructure stuff like you had, you know, kind of uncovered when Bill brought that up. I think we should totally go ahead and plan it, and I'm gonna definitely have a heavy hand in that. Everybody, it looks like we are pretty much at the top of our time. 10:15 is about as far as we can go today. And I know that there's a few questions that we didn't get to here in the chat together with Sean live. Please feel free to send him an email or reach out to him with some questions that you might have. Or if you're able to, maybe jot them down and let's dive real deep into them on a 301 webinar with him soon. We thank you so much for coming, though, everyone. And
Happy
thanks,
to be here.
Sean.
Thanks, Al.
Yeah, that's been awesome. I'm excited to figure out who has one of those solar yachts that I can hop on.
Seriously, me too. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
gonna take off. Is that cool?
Great. Thank you,
Yeah.
Sean.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. We will
Bye,
see you
everyone.
guys next time.